Welcome, everyone, to Stepping Into Your Leadership. I'm your host, Christine Courtney. Our goal here is to give you some actionable takeaways that will help you lead your teams. Thanks for joining us on this leadership journey. Let's get started. We're here in Stepping Into Your Leadership by popular demand, back by popular demand. We are going to talk about some real life case studies that people have given us or sent to us or talked to us about. We just finished up our latest cohort of Leadership Learning Lab, or as we like to say, L3. And our Leadership Learning Lab, for those of you who don't know, is we take a cohort of about between 10 and 20 people. They come online from all over the country for an hour and a half every week for 8 weeks, and they get what I believe is the best of the best in terms of people management skills, everything from 20 tips to effective people management, to navigating difficult conversations, to increasing your emotional intelligence, to what else is in there? What other?
Performance feedback. So how do you get performance reviews, delegation and prioritization?
Delegation. That's a big one.
Situational leadership.
What did you say?
Situational leadership.
Situational leadership, yeah. All our faves are in there. So we have another cohort starting. If you're interested in getting in on this next one, I'm sure there'll be a link somewhere, right, Tati? They can.
Yeah, I can do that.
So, but anyway, we have a new one starting up in February, and then after that, we'll have another one we have about four times a year, 3 or 4 times a year. But anyway, I brought Tom in here today. Tom Armstrong is back in the house because he manages tons of people, and over the years, certainly way into the double digits in terms of those numbers. I mean, maybe triple digits. I don't even know.
That's because everybody quits within 2 weeks of working with him. It's been hundreds. We're in the hundreds now.
He's joking. He's just that old. No, and then,
old is beautiful.
And then and Tatiana Dominguez, our producer, is here today as well because she also has managed lots of people in her career. And I wanted to give them a couple of the real case studies that we've been getting. And those of you, I know some of you have told me that I've run into have really liked that part of the podcast. So we're going to bring them back for a little bit, even though it's not summertime. All right. So you guys ready? I'm going to read you the email that I got from somebody asking for help. Then I'm going to allow Tom to give his idea of, Tom's never heard this before. I'm going to have Tom give his idea of what to do. And then Tatiana can jump in and say where Tom's wrong. No. Where Tom is maybe right, or what she would add on, or how she would do it differently, because we're all different kinds of managers.
I thought we were doing yes and. I was told my contract for this podcast said everything was going to be yes.
I know.
You're right, Tom.
We like controversy, Tom.
Sure.
No, but we have all been trained in the same way at Leadership Program. We've all worked together for a number of years. However, we are different individuals that come with a slightly different style, even though we are grounded in the same basis of leadership and people management. So here we go. You guys ready?
Ready.
All right. I manage a small team of 5, and I am facing some challenges that I hope you can help me with. Some of the team members are older and have been with the company for a long time, so they are pretty set in their ways. I've been trying to share more information with them, offering new approaches and advice on how to improve our work processes, but they seem to revert to their old methods or outright ignore the suggestions I give. I am committed to helping them grow and improve, but I'm feeling frustrated because the more I try to guide them, the more resistant they seem to be. How can I encourage them to be more open to change and accept the advice I am offering without causing tension or making them feel like I'm undermining their experience? Good problem.
That's a good question. Yeah. And I think one thing I might speak, just a subtle change of approach that I would suggest to that person first would be to not focus on the age of the people, but on the behaviors. An 18-year-old could exhibit this behavior. So it's really to try to get that out of my mind when I'm thinking about it. Not that this person is, whatever age or above this person might be, that the reality is, but it's like, what behaviors are you seeing? Just to make sure that it's not possibly part of a bias that they have about the individual based on their age, because that is a thing in life. So I would also just check in with the person on that, not in an accusatory way, but just in a sort of like, let's make sure, just check in on that. Focus on behaviors, not. However, there is an indicator that age does bring, which could be years in the company, right? If this person's been working in this company for 20 years and all of their habits and their methodologies are based on 20 years of experience, I could talk about those 20 years. That's not about age. That's about time doing a particular thing, which can influence their desire to change, because a lot of their speed is probably due to having honed in those skills, and that gives them an advantage until you change the context. Like that's what's happening. I think the first thing I would do is also try to make sure that I'm communicating to this individual the value added that they bring to the organization because of those 20 years of institutional knowledge, and also make sure that I'm aware of that myself, but I'm also communicating to that to them. Part of it could be a feeling of, I've been doing this for a long time, and this newcomer comes in, they're telling me what to do. They don't even know the impact. And it's possible that the change that's happening could have a negative impact on the company that person can't see, but someone with 20 years experience can. So it could be that some of the resistance is coming from actually, like, I'm trying to protect the organization here, not just because I'm lazy or something, right? So it's getting into root causes, I think, is important. One root cause might be I'm resentful because I feel like no one appreciates the expertise that I bring, and you're just asking me to change. And it's like your only performance is what you did yesterday, not 20 years of gained knowledge. And what that you're taking for granted the impact that experience can bring to this organization, right? So it's kind of having that conversation, I think, is helpful, and making sure that people know that they're valued. Yeah. And that their experience is valued. Then there are going to be certain elements, there's certain changes that have to happen. I would also explain to the person the impact that this change is going to have on the company, and the impact that not changing is going to have on this company, and the impact that not changing is going to have on the team. So it's like giving where I can. There's areas where I might say, you know what? That system that you use, I know it makes you more effective. I'm not going to make you do the same thing everybody does, because I see that the best path for you is to use that system. I'm going to let you continue with that. That's great. There's this other thing that we all have to do, and it's different. And I'm going to need you to learn it, because if you don't, this is what's going to happen to the team. This is what's going to happen to our bottom line. I need you with us. And I know change is hard. It's hard for all of us, and I totally get it. But on this, I need you to change. Can you do that? Yeah. And if their answer is no, and it truly is absolute necessary change for your organization, and it has to be streamlined, everybody has to do this the same, and you have a straight up no, I'm not going to do it, right? That's one thing. Then you have to put an HR process in place for that, because that's sort of an insubordinate response, right? I'm not going to do it. The other is, yes, I would like to. And then you have to think and work out a coaching scenario that takes into account their pace of learning, and try to set up realistic goals for them to be able to achieve the change that you need. So it would be a coaching session that's going to be a little bit ongoing, maybe a couple months of process, where I'm going to put extra care into making sure that this person can do the thing, because now they want it. They understand the value of it. They want it. Or maybe they've said, you know what, I don't get the value of it, but I understand you telling me that it's absolutely non-negotiable. So I'll do it, right? So now they've decided to do it. You do need to set up benchmarks and an action plan to get them there. And it has to be realistic and something that's able for them to achieve. And then if they don't achieve it, there's other processes. It's possible that if this person's unwilling or incapable of this new technology or whatever it is, that they have to be phased into a different part of the organization that can fully utilize their skill set. But it's possible they can't be on the team. So, but you don't want to make that decision until you've A, checked your biases, B, talk to them about all those value added they bring, make them not feel alienated, C, sort of try to make sure that this is actually an essential ask. And then if it is, that you've put an action plan in place to get them there if they agree.
All right. Thanks, Tom. Yep. I agree with you that, sometimes you have to be careful because we think that it's age. I have some thoughts. I don't think that you can, you definitely can't say to them it's because of age, but there are different things you can try depending on some generational differences, right? Tatiana, let's hear, do you have some thoughts about that? What you would add, what you might do also?
Yeah, my first thought was I would question the manager that wrote this in and say, are these changes necessary? Are they just your ideas? And if so, is there a process in terms of generating ideas to to improve systems that would include them and in their years of experience. Because sometimes, I've learned this the hard way. Like, my idea is the best, and people are resistant to that, and they might get there by themselves. And it's easier to get buy-in when you have had like an innovation session, a brainstorming session, really list out what the problems are. And then you can get to what this thing is and to hear what they've tried in the past. Because I think sometimes, just to ideate and create new ideas, just to create them might not be necessary. Or you think you're coming up with a new idea and they've already tried it, right? Because you're talking about like 20 years of experience. It's just like, yeah, we've tried something like this before. And you don't necessarily know that, because you can say like, oh, okay, let's take some lessons from that. And how do we improve that so we don't make the same mistakes again? Or what have you seen and how has it failed? Because I think that institutional knowledge is really important in terms of, I have these ideas to better the organization. I want your help in terms of improving this. Like, what do you see are some of the issues in terms of getting things off the ground?
I love that, because Tatiana in our company, she's at least 10 years younger than us, has to push through us a lot of times new initiatives and ideas, right? So I can see how sometimes we have been around the block with this company. We've seen changes that have happened. We know what works, what doesn't. We think we know what works, what doesn't work. So it's very interesting, Tatiana, to hear you, who is one of those people that's always trying to make us change or look at our processes differently. To have you answer this question, I immediately put myself in the shoe of the older person again. So that's at the company that thinks that they know. So I think that's a really good point. If you can get them on board with the reason why, when you're able to say to me, like, I think this is going to cut your workload in half by doing something with this, but I want to get your input on whether it's worth it or not for us to prioritize this, then I'm interested.
Thank you for saying that, Christine. I think one of the things also to be careful of is I'm always that person that has ideas. You still have to be open to other people's ideas and changes, because you might think, because there's plenty of times that I've sat in meetings with newer people like, oh, we've already done this, and the truth is that I should step up and say, oh, we've done something like this before. Let's look at some of the lessons, like Tom, you have the great post-mortem on projects that we've done, what happened, what went wrong, and to kind of document those processes so that people can learn from them in the future.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think there's one step, we're going into rabbit holes here, but there is one step that's often missed, which is the stakeholder analysis. And anytime we have a new project, especially anything large, but even small ones that a team member is starting, we always try to make sure they do a stakeholder analysis first, which is list out all the stakeholders, people that are positively or negatively impacted or can positively or negatively impact a project. Create the list, go to them, ask them if they could think of other stakeholders that need to be talked to. You will let them know about the project. You ask them questions about the project. You get their input. The reason for this is that sometimes you'll hear, oh, someone's already working on that. Or, yeah, we did this last year. It's already done. Or whatever. But one of the benefits is that once it's complete, everybody, all those stakeholders feel buy-in, because they were like, yeah, I was a part of this process. They heard my input. And hopefully they see that you heard their input too, that it's not just you listen to them and then you did nothing based on their input. But if I know that my input has been taken into consideration, the end user's been thought of, whatever, I'm much more likely to buy into the change.
Yeah. And, technology and processes change really rapidly these days, much more rapidly than they did in our beginnings of our career. And so there could be a little bit of that too, a little bit of fear. There could be a little bit of fear of like, oh, you're going to make me do this change, and then there's going to be a new change next year. And that could be true.
That's a really good point. Yeah, you have to think about the context for what other things. Do they feel a little bit abused by changes that have then been, look at, this happens when you have, in politics, you have someone new comes in, they're like, we're going to do things my way. And then someone else is elected, everything restarts. We're going to do things their way. Like, we didn't even really fully try the last thing, So anyway,
yeah,
I feel like we beat this horse. Well, I shouldn't use that metaphor, feel like we fed this horse too much grain.
Are you tired of it? All right. Well, before we end today, I want to ask you, because we have the holidays coming up in the spirit of appreciation and gratitude, I thought it would be nice if you could share somebody that was a leadership model for you growing up. So who's got one in mind? Tom, you got one?
I respond well to management styles that basically say, here's the goal, go. Because I like to be creative with my process. And so if I know the goal, I know the deadline, and then I have to I'll be really passionate about that project. If you tell me all the steps I have to do to get there, I just don't dig into it as much. And I remember an uncle of mine when I was working with him on building a house, and he was that way. He directed me, told me exactly what I needed to know to be able to do my job, put up a wall. I was 13 years old, putting up a wall with, of a house. And, then he would watch out of the corner of his eye while he did his thing, but he wasn't hovering over me. And the funny thing is, when I first then started leading people in my adult life, I thought, since that worked for me, that must work for everybody. That was my next lesson. It does not translate. But there are some people that thrive in that environment and others that do not. So you have to tailor your management style to everybody. I learned that later. But in that moment, that was really inspirational for me, is understanding just to be set free. Because in high school, middle school, high school, you don't get that feeling.
Yeah.
So I love that.
Yeah. And it's also that's very smart of your uncle, because watch the age and, depending on where somebody is, they want a little autonomy. That's great. Tatiana, you got somebody?
Yeah, I have somebody. Actually, it's a teacher. I think it was maybe in the 11th grade geometry teacher. I was very talkative in his class. Some might say disruptive. And he didn't discourage me from talking. He actually what he did instead, we had a teacher swap day. And so he had me be the geometry teacher for the day. So it was a school-wide thing. And so I was the teacher. And so I had to learn the theorems and all that stuff and teach it. And then after that, I just kind of stayed in the class as the leader in the room. And I think back to that moment so often. Actually, he passed away recently. And I didn't get a chance to tell him how much that impacted me, of just that moment of him trusting me to be a leader, and then to teach my classmates and help them and take them through learning geometry in this case.
Awesome.
It's that trust piece is the through line for both of those.
So Tom, is your uncle still alive?
Uncle George, to my knowledge.
Then
he's not my
write
uncle
him a
anymore,
thank you
but
card.
I think of him as my uncle. Yeah, it's a good idea.
Okay. Thank you guys for joining us today, and keep sending in your letters. We'll put them on every once in a while. So we appreciate it. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Tatiana.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. I'd like to give a special shout out to our podcast producer, Richard Francisco. Check out our notes for any details. And if you get anything out of this, please follow us. And if you enjoy it, please take a moment to rate us or write a comment. It will mean the world to us. We'd love to hear from you. And if you just can't get enough, follow me on TikTok and check out tlpnyc.com/podcast for more information.